And now a few thoughts from Randy Looney.
To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish till death do us part. Whoever wrote that part never had to actually do it, which partially explains why 50% of all marriages end up in divorce. I mean, ever notice how the people who spout mantras like those often have absolutely no direct experience to draw from? Sort of like how the peace and love types are often some of the most prone to violence and domestic abuse. Doctors are actually some of the unhealthiest people around. Accountants are often some of the most disorganized people who can't even manage their own personal finances. Lawyers who read contracts for a living couldn't even tell you what their own insurance policies cover or exclude. Some of the filthiest, neglected, and most abused cars tend to be owned by mechanics. And on and on. So let's examine that bit about till death do us part. We often hear how life is short, which it is not. Life is long. Ruth and Bill McConnell have been married for 50 years now, after only knowing each other for 4 days. Just literally asking a lifelong commitment from a 20-something who likely really doesn't even know quite what they want out of life yet, even though they may say that they do, is more than a little bit of a tall order. I mean, it's easy when two people are young and don't have much to really not want all that much, and to think that what they want will remain relatively unchanged throughout their lives is a bit unrealistic. And yet young Ruthie Heerman wrote her parents in 1967, "If I don't know what I want by now, I never will." Now see, things like that old sedan with stains and smells of unknown origin in the interior and annoying fluid leaks might do just fine for them right now. But as one gets older, the idea of playing automotive paramedic when needed, especially during rush hour traffic on a major expressway or on an interstate through wheat or cornfields, or coming up with clever new wisecracks about their jalopi's not-so-cute little quirks, eventually gets tiresome. So suffice it to say that Ensign Bill McConnell really lucked out in finding a nice young gal who was willing to endure the fact that her feet would get wet in Bill's midnight blue 57 DeSoto Firefly, which they nicknamed the Batmobile, likely not so much for its resemblance to George Barris's customized 56 Lincoln Futura concept car seen on the popular TV show of the time, but rather for the distinct possibility that a few winged rodents might likely wish to make it their home should they happen to spot it from above. Or that bargain Howard Johnson's swimming pool blue 1964 Ford Fairlane station wagon that revealed a dearly departed rat from under the passenger seat one day during a hard stop on the car's drum brakes. And a young childless couple on a tight budget watching for sales at clearance stores and bringing groceries home in boxes soon gives way to finding creative ways to finance music and swimming lessons, attending school assemblies of venues frequented by other young people, and educational as well as often completely mind-numbing playthings once little ones enter the picture. That's not to say that creativity cannot produce teaching moments for one's children that last a lifetime. Bill's eldest son, Billy Scott, cut his own automotive body repair chops by watching his dad meticulously patch the rusted fenders on his parents' 1977 Dodge Aspen SE station wagon, kludge and crumbling exhaust along just a little longer with things like coat hangers and aluminum beer cans, and even how an essential bodily function can be used to extinguish a fire after a negligent, knuckle-dragging mouth breather at Z-Bart decides it's a good idea to coat the catalytic converter with rubberized rust-proofing coating. Marriage definitely has its advantages, though. For one thing, there's no more dressing up in expensive and often ridiculously overpriced and uncomfortable clothes you really don't like wearing in order to attract the ideal mate. Challenger from Kmart flannel shirts and Big Yank jeans do far more to repel Jezebels than to attract them. Indeed, instead, the focus shifts towards building something with someone who's made a genuine commitment to you, irrespective of your wardrobe. You can stay home and start enjoying the routine life of knowing what to expect, which often makes up for how dull and boring that can actually be. In addition, You worry less about hiding all of your not-so-pleasant quirks and odors from each other. Hanging out around the house in sweatpants is definitely more comfortable than the clothes you wear when you're trying to impress someone enough, particularly at places where you risk subjecting yourself to severe and permanent hearing loss, to marry you. Still, though, till death do us part still seems like quite a bit to ask for just all of this. But there's definitely a certain inner peace from not having to pretend that you like things or are a certain way when you aren't, because your spouse will learn the truth quickly, no matter how hard you try to mask it. Even though Ruth had taught high school in Appleton, Wisconsin, she was not at all a Green Bay Packers fan, or of any other major sports teams for that matter. And since many people in this world see marriage as a rite of passage into adulthood, you also tend to gain a certain level of respect from them as well. Also, having a partner that is a constant, although not perfect, can make you feel stronger and better equipped to tackle the daily trials, tribulations, and setbacks, as well as to enjoy the rewards this world dishes out. Of course, the one thing that single people have that married people do not: freedom. Freedom to go out and come and go as they please without having to explain or ask someone else. Freedom to hang out, do completely pointless and unconstructive and often sometimes destructive things, and get into any of several altered states if they want to, without worrying that someone will get mad when they stumble in at 4 a.m. or call them from the lockup to go their bail. Of course, when your husband is a guy like Bill McConnell, who used to get greeted at the local Radio Shack like Norm from Cheers, it's a pretty safe bet that his idea of nefarious or illicit behavior is running too much power through his ham radio antenna tower, or engaging in Barney Collier-esque Mission Impossible-style nighttime sabotage operations on his neighbor's obnoxious external outdoor telephone bell that would ring at 3 a.m. on weeknights. Freedom to have a one-night stand with someone just because they somehow looked much more enchanting through that lovely shade of blur brought on by too many Long Island iced teas, which never happens when your preferred holy water of choice is 10 high. Freedom to put that lease payment down on that temperamental European sports car that you can't even afford insurance on, as you're barely making your rent each month, with no one around to tell you how ignorant and stupid you really are for doing so. Freedom to be as clean or as messy in your own home as you want, without worrying that the crusty stains and microbial growth on the bathroom plumbing fixtures will subject you to irate reprimands and tirades from your significant other. Freedom to have a bed to yourself, to not have to listen to someone else snore and pass gas or steal the covers on a 30-degree night. But there's also one constant in the single versus married life. That constant is you. Just because you get married to someone, it doesn't necessarily mean you change who you are. You might change and learn to compromise. You might grow a bit, but the person that you've always been is still very much there. Often, it is the way that you look at things that changes. When you're single and having the time of your life, the idea of being tied so tightly to one other person can feel like an enormous nightmare. Yet, if you are single and lonely, having someone to grow old with can feel like a breath of fresh air and hope. Patti Smythe once sang, "Sometimes love just ain't enough," and sometimes it is, particularly when you're Bill and Ruth McConnell.